You're joining All Things College and Career for in-depth stories and advice with your hosts, Meg Gary and Bobby Ryan, owners of Academic and Career Advising Services.
Hello, everyone. Today's topic is gap years. So if you are interested in taking a gap year, or you have a friend, son, daughter, student that is interested in this, or maybe you are a college counselor and know of a student that a gap year would really benefit. If so, this podcast is for you.
Absolutely. Today, we're very excited to welcome Rebecca Barr from Education First, where she helps others find their perfect gap year. And interestingly enough, Rebecca shared her own gap year experiences, which was really fascinating. And I think you'll enjoy hearing those. But she talks about how they can be very productive. Rebecca points out how taking a gap year can really help to clarify your academic and career goals. You can do productive things within the gap year that can help be an asset to your resume. And if you're not quite ready to make a decision about your future or college or a career, this may be a perfect place for you to start.
Absolutely. And don't think it's just for college students. Education First has a program for all ages. Meg and I are ready to go after talking to Rebecca. I mean, come on, who doesn't want to travel the world and eat great food and learn another language? But
that's right. Bobby and I are all ready to sign up. It sounds like a great time.
Oh, yeah, it really does. But Rebecca can do a much better job of all this than we can. So let's get on to the podcast.
Let's do it. Hello, Rebecca Barr. Welcome to All Things College and Career. Thanks so much for joining us on our podcast today.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, we are excited to have you and learn all about why the gap year. But let's get into your life a little bit before we start. So what is your gap year story? And then what kind of brought you to your current path where you are now? We know you did go to school, but you had that gap year first. So maybe just walk us through that quickly before we get into all the benefits of a gap year. But let us hear about yours first.
Yeah, absolutely. So thinking way back in the day to high school, I grew up in the South, actually. I grew up in Tennessee and Alabama. And I was in high school and had never even heard the term gap year. This was back in 2009 when I graduated from high school. So, things were a little less clear at that point in terms of what a gap year is, what those alternative options were. But I was really lucky. My parents are both educators. They both really valued, the two things they said, we don't have a ton of money, but what money we have, we're going to spend on education and travel. Those are the two important things here. And as I grew up, I had the chance to travel a little bit with them, a little bit with my school. And I had really had my eyes opened to, what the world could provide me in terms of a new perspective. Growing up in Memphis and Birmingham, sometimes my perspective was limited. It is a very different place, somewhat different from other parts of the U.S. in terms of being exposed to international and global perspectives. And as I had my eyes open slowly, I realized that this was something that I wanted to pursue as a career, something I wanted to study in college. And actually, the actual origin story of how I found my gap year option was from my mom, the teacher, who got an email from a listserv about this great opportunity to do programs either in the summer or for the year, fully funded by the U.S. State Department. She said, Rebecca, you should really apply for this. Do a summer program maybe. And I saw this and I said, oh, nope, I'm going to do a whole year. I'm going to apply and spend an entire year abroad. And at that time, I didn't even have the term gap year for it. But I said, I want to take this year between high school and college. I'd already been accepted to my top choice college, Georgetown. And I was really excited about that. I was really excited to chat with my admissions officer at Georgetown, who said, this is awesome. You should definitely do this. Take this time, come back to campus when you are even more prepared, even more excited, have an even better perspective to share with the campus. So that's kind of my origin story. And I'm happy to talk more about that experience. But I spent a whole wonderful year in Turkey with the NSLIY program, National Security Initiative for Youth, and learned Turkish, lived with a homestay family that I'm still in touch with, made incredible friends, and just gained so much adaptability and resilience, and had my eyes open to this global path that I would end up taking.
Wow.
I'm jealous. I didn't do a gap year.
I know that should be next.
Too late?
Gap years for adults.
It sounds great, and you just hear the enthusiasm in your voice. People can't see you right now, but your whole face lights up when you talk about it. It's clearly was something you got incredible enjoyment and experience out of. So then you also went to get your master's in Germany, correct? So
That's right,
how did those steps go? And then kind of like what ultimately led you into where you are now in this career?
Absolutely. Yeah. So at Georgetown, I was at their School of Foreign Service. So had a very international curriculum, made such amazing friends from across the globe. And as I, started to get towards my senior year, as many students think, what are my next steps? What do I want to be doing? How can I channel all that I've learned and gained in my college career into that profession? And I realized that I was really passionate about working with students. I'd been actively involved on campus with a few different groups, including like leading identity and diversity-based dialogues, really working on different student programming. So I actually decided to take my first position in this international education realm, working for Georgetown at their campus in Qatar, in Doha, Qatar.
Wow.
I spent 2 years with them after college, and working there was such an eye-opening experience for me. I'd lived in Turkey, I had studied abroad in Egypt during college, but living there and working with an incredible body of students from across the globe really solidified my personal goals in terms of wanting to help other students find the right path for them. And in this international education realm, it can look like a lot of different things, right? It can, everything from teaching English abroad to managing different student programs. And now I'm in this gap year realm, which feels very full circle to me. But when I think about what that path has looked like, I worked at Georgetown in Qatar for a couple of years. And then I came back. I'm actually in Maine now. I believe you both are as well.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. Go Maine.
I just assumed you were in Cambridge, Mass, where EF is based out of, I believe.
Yeah. That's right. But I actually ended up back in the U.S. in Maine right after working in Qatar. And I'm in Portland. Love it here.
Yeah.
I find this to be like my home base now. So I worked here for a couple of years, actually at the University of New England down in Biddeford, and they have a campus in Morocco. So I worked closely with that program, sending students over there. And at that point, I found myself a bit at a crossroads. I was loving working in this international education realm, but I really wanted to go back to school. I love learning. I love reading and studying and looking at things from an academic perspective. So for me, I started looking into master's programs, and I realized that even with my global perspective at that point, I'd always been very squarely in the U.S. educational system. So even living in different places, working for a university abroad, it was still a U.S.-based university.
Right.
So for me, that was really important to gain perspective through the lens of other educational systems, from the lens of scholars in Germany, where my program was based, as well as in Argentina and Thailand, where I spent a semester in each place during my master's. So
that makes a ton
really
of
gave
sense.
me a global perspective there, for sure.
Yeah, for your master's program that you were going into, international education, what better thing than to do an international education?
Absolutely.
This is a stupid question, but were the classes taught in English at the German school, or?
Thankfully, yes, because my German is not that good.
Yeah. I was going to say that would have been an incredible leap to, but wow, what a range of experience you've had. And did you have any fear in the Middle East at all when you were in Qatar, Turkey?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of folks ask me that, especially as I was 17 years old and about to head off on my gap year to Turkey. And what I found was, first of all, I felt so great over there. I mean, like in every place, you face different situations that make you feel uncomfortable, but it's the same thing that I might feel in New York, or that I might feel, in a new city in the US that I've never been to. But what I found was overall such overwhelming hospitality. My host family was just, they're my family now. They embraced me. I learned so much from them about their culture, about their beliefs, about the way that they grew up, about just all of these things that I could never have anticipated or imagined beforehand. And one thing I really think is great about my personal story, but also I hear this from a lot of students who take gap years, is that your experience doesn't just stay within you. It's not just your own transformation, but I got to go back to my hometown. I got to go back to Birmingham and say, listen, folks have different preconceived notions about what the Middle East looks like or what it's like to live there. And let me tell you my experience. And it really runs counter to what we see in the media or what some of the stereotypes are. So it was, I think, a really great learning moment for me personally. And I was really happy to sort of share that perspective with my communities back at home.
Yeah, that's the most important aspect of traveling outside our own world to, when we learn and get to know about others, we understand them better and there's less.
Drops the barriers, brings up understanding. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. And so when you left your master's program in Germany, did you go right to the position you are in now, or was that your next step?
I did. Yeah, that's right. So I actually finished my master's about a year ago now and went right into this position at EF, which I started. It's my 1-year anniversary this week.
All right.
Which is an exciting time to start right before sort of COVID hit.
Yeah.
So most of my experience here has been working from home, which has actually, made the best of it, hunkered down. And it's been a great year, I think, learning about EF's specific programs and really getting a feel for that. I just love what we're able to provide for our students. And it's also been a great time for us as a team to really think critically about, what is the benefit of a gap year? Right now, we're seeing more students than ever interested in the gap concept, more applications for our program than ever before. It's just such a hot topic right now. And there are a lot of reasons that I'm sure we'll get into that. But it's been a great time to come back to this gap year realm. And again, it feels very full circle to me to now be helping other students have those eye-opening moments like my own gap year was for me.
For sure.
Well, maybe now is a good time to just tell us a little bit about EF or Education First and what are the gap year options and what does that look like and what kind of students would benefit from the gap year and why are students taking a gap year? Maybe just explain what you offer and the options, programs for anybody listening that might be interested in such a thing.
Totally. So many good questions in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I guess I'll start with EF as an organization. EF Education First is a really amazing global education provider. So we were actually founded over 55 years ago now by Bertil Holt, who is Swedish, who really wanted to create opportunities for folks to study English outside of their home countries, really get to learn it. He has a pretty incredible story himself of how he, came up with this idea and got it into action. And now it's a global education organization that provides different travel opportunities for folks of all ages, everything from high school class trips, for example, to our GAP programs. We have college study programs on up to adults. We've got retirees who are headed out on EF programs to different parts of the world. So at really every age range, we think there's so much benefit to traveling with that educational mindset, right? To travel with that idea of being able to immerse yourself, being able to, look and benefit from the cultures that you're visiting there.
There's all age is a good age to be learning, right? There's no time on that. Yeah. There's no time end on that. Yeah.
100%. Lifelong learning. That's another key thing for us.
Or long life learning.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. It's not mine. We just had Michelle Weiss on our podcast and she wrote the book, Long Life Learning, preparing for jobs that don't even exist yet. And that's, so I can't claim that, but yeah.
Yeah,
Long
she's
life
amazing.
Learning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, thinking about our little EF gap year realm. So we think of ourselves as kind of the startup within EF. We combine some of the other programs and other parts of the organization to create our gap programs. We started running our first cohorts back in 2018. Building off of this 55-year-long EF base, but really customizing the programs. Our whole goal in our programs is to prepare students for life.
Yeah.
I think this is something we're hearing a lot from high schoolers right now is that they're not feeling ready to take those next steps, especially when we think of college as such an investment, financially, in terms of energy. It's a highly competitive environment. And what we really want is to prepare students to take those next steps, feeling confident in themselves and feeling confident that they're going down the right path, that they're not wasting their time studying something that they may not actually be interested in, or that they may not feel invested in for their future. So with our program, students are traveling across the globe, doing sort of 3 core parts through their travels. They're doing a language study component, a service learning component, and an internship component. So all of these that really prepare students for these different things that they might face in those next steps.
One thing I loved, I think I either read it on your website or somewhere, but is when students should be thinking more in terms of, instead of I should, I choose. And I thought that was great. Like so many kids are like, well, I should do this, I should do that, like I should take this AP class. But when it comes to the gap year, maybe that is something that, I choose to do this. And instead of feeling like I should go to college, that's what I'm supposed to be doing right now, right after high school. And maybe that's not exactly what is best for that student.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that framing, because that is what we hear. I think of myself as a high schooler. I was always thinking, I should take this AP class, or I should apply to this college. And we all come with these preset ideas of what the right path should be for us. And a gap is really a time to take a step back and say, let me reevaluate. Let me see what else is out there in the world. We see a lot of our alums finding paths that they may not have even been able to find without taking a gap. That's certainly the case for me. I don't think I would have ended up in this international education realm if I hadn't taken a gap year. And we see that too with students who find marine biology while they're studying on their gap year, or find a career in the fashion industry, things that are different from what they'd expected or been exposed to in high school, that then turn into really meaningful paths for them afterwards.
Yeah, young people, their exposure is so limited. They know what their family and friends do for work and people in their community that they've seen firsthand. But this is really an opportunity to explore beyond those boundaries, to learn what else may appeal to you. So it's such a great opportunity that way. You had mentioned that your programs have 3 components: language, internship, and what was the other one?
Service learning.
So could you just, maybe briefly tell us what those look like, those components? And is that across all spectrums, like for the retired groups that go out? Do they also have those 3 components?
Just in case we go, right, Maggie?
Yeah,
just in case.
We're just doing some personal research here.
Yeah. Great question. So our gap year programs specifically are structured around those 3 modules, but actually a lot of our EF programs do tie into those as well. With our gap year, for example, the 25-week-long gap year programs, that's the longest program, looks sort of like an academic year at college, your fall semester, winter break, spring semester on the road. So with that, you have all of those 3 modules in there, plus a couple of other fun trips. You get to explore Europe for 2 weeks. You get to go to Australia and New Zealand for 3 weeks and see some of those amazing sites there. But those were really intentionally chosen modules for a few reasons. One is because this is what a lot of students are looking for when they think about taking a gap year. When students are asked, what do you want to get out of it? They say, I want that cultural immersion, sort of language immersion piece. I want to give back. I really want to learn more about the world around me and what my role is in solving different global issues. And they say, I want to gain that professional experience. I want to have something that I can put on my resume that will set me apart. I want to have some experience in the business world, gaining skills. A lot of internships are about running coffee, which can be valuable in its own right, but our internships are really designed to give students that inside look at different organizations across the globe and to allow them to gain that professional experience and to contribute their own value to the organization. So I can unpack the language module. That's sort of the chronological order of them: language, service, internship, when we think about the year. With the language module, we actually have EF language campuses. This is another part of our organization across the globe. And so in, I think, 11 different cities, students are able on our GAP programs to study German in Berlin, or to study Japanese in Tokyo, to study Spanish in Barcelona, or maybe they want a different sort of beachside experience in Costa Rica. So we also have a language school there. And it's really a great chance for students to learn in the classroom. So they're in the classroom in the mornings, they're learning from native speakers, really focusing on gaining proficiency in terms of being able to use it practically. Some students ask us when they first hear about this, they say, I didn't love my high school Spanish class. Yeah. I wasn't a huge fan of learning it. I can't memorize all this vocabulary. that's not what this is all about. It's all about learning how to order the food at the restaurant, learning how to make sure you can talk with your host family. That's really the focus there. And then we do have advanced levels for students who maybe they love languages. I'm a big language nerd. So, if students have already taken Spanish up through AP Spanish in high school, that's great. We can put them in a super advanced class there and really, really boost their levels. So with the language, it really is about both those classroom learning pieces and about how you're immersing yourself outside of it. So being able to chat with new friends over tapas in Barcelona, or being able to, spend time wandering around Rome with a new friend, getting to see all the historic sites there. All of that is part of that immersion experience and what makes that module so special.
Right. And so when you talk about modules, obviously you have those three components, but obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, here's my question. Are the students in different locations around the world for those modules? Can they stay in one place? Do they choose the places they go?
Yeah, great question. We think of our programs as very customizable. So, that's another thing that students want when they come for a gap year. I might have a particular idea in my head of what a perfect gap year looks like. Bobby, you might have a different one. Meg, you might have a different one.
Right.
So we really make them customizable. So with each location in the gap year, you can choose your location in each module, I should say. So for example, in language study, maybe I want to brush up on my French in Paris. Bobby, you want to study Japanese in Tokyo. Meg, you want to... Meg is all about the German in Berlin. Who knows?
Sounds
but
good.
Then we might all want to be in service learning in Thailand. So we might all be together there. And then we might all disperse again for our internships. So Meg, you might head to Stockholm, and Bobby, you might head to Sevilla, Spain, and I might head off to Sydney, Australia. So just a lot of different groupings. And I think that's pretty fun for the students too, that they have the cohort feel. They are all together, at the beginning and at the end of the program, but throughout the gap experience, they're able to really make the path their own and get what they want to get out of it.
I love that. That sounds awesome.
That is great. So when they branch off and do their own individual things, are they legitimately or literally on their own, or are they with other students doing the same thing? Or
yeah, they are with other students. So typically our cohort size in each module ranges from 5 to 20. So for example, maybe there's a smaller group in Tokyo for the internship. It might be 7 of us. But then we do cap, some of the modules have some capacity limits there. So for example, in Dublin, we already filled up to our 20% limit for next year's GAP programs. It's a very popular internship, as you can imagine. Dublin's amazing. So, it just depends, but you're never alone. That's a big thing. I do want to stress that we really believe that it's important to have that cohort feel. And we always have EF support for students, both on the ground during each module and with their program advisors who are back in the Cambridge office over here.
So are you always with a host family when you're in your different modules, or are you sometimes, I don't know, in dorms, or I don't know, like what's
It totally varies based on the module. So in the language immersion, you are with a homestay family, which I think is so great for that language immersion, for getting the feel. I mean, there's really no better way to learn a language. No, it really isn't. I love that. And then in service learning, depending on where they are, the accommodations could be a hostel, could be an eco lodge in Costa Rica. While they're on safari, the group in Tanzania goes on safari as part of their service learning module. So, they're staying out there in some tents, being really experiencing that. So it just totally depends on each module.
Right.
And then in the internship, that's the most independent part. So students are we arrange a shared apartment for them with the other GAP students.
Oh, okay.
They get to live and really learn how to work that 9-to-5 life, commute, do all those things that you need to do as an adult in this world. Learning how to grocery shop and cook your own meals and how to budget is definitely the most independent part of the program, which is why we structured it to be languages. You have a lot of support, same with service learning, and then you're gradually sort of moving into this internship realm where you're taking all these global skills that you've been developing for the past few months and channeling it into really learning how to work and live in a totally new city halfway across the globe.
Yeah, that's such a comprehensive approach. I love it. You sort of hit all the important things.
Right. So for an internship, do you kind of get to choose your internship, some area that you're interested in, or is it kind of chosen for you? How does that work? And Rebecca will answer that question with some really cool internship examples. right after this.
Thank you, Bobby. I just wanted to quickly break in here to share. I am now an FCD instructor, so if you would like to become a certified career counselor through the NCDA, I can now make that happen for you. I also offer career coaching and academic advising. To learn more about any of these services, please visit my website, Academic and Career Advising Services. I will include that link in the show notes. Now, back to the podcast.
Yeah, so we have partnerships with different organizations across the globe and all of these cities where we do internships. And we work both with them to see, what are your needs? What kinds of students are you looking for? How many folks do you need at this particular time? And we ask the students a lot too. We help the students develop their resumes, their CVs. We help them think through what is it that they want to get out of their internship. Do you want to be in a specific industry? Do you want to be developing certain skills? Is there something that you think you want to try before going down a career path in college and beyond? So we work sort of on both ends to make sure we're matching students well. We have them interview with 1 or 2 or 3 organizations, just depending on to see what kind of fit there's going to be there. And then we place them with an organization that really fits that. So a few examples, we have had students work at social media marketing firms in Sydney, Australia. We had a student do a really awesome internship at a solar panel startup in Sevilla, Spain. They just really loved. Another student did one at a kombucha company.
Oh, yeah.
So really, she got to learn all about how do you build a kombucha company and all about the inner workings and the sort of marketing pieces there as well. So we have students interning at a theater in Tokyo. Just really amazing internships and really insider looks at these very interesting fields. So we've even had students get job offers or get continued internships after they're done with our program because we usually find such good fits for them and the companies really enjoy having them there.
That's awesome.
That is awesome. So I know on your website you have an area for teachers and educators. How does that play into this whole gap year process?
That's a great question. I particularly love it because that's a big part of my role is working closely with teachers, with educators, with guidance counselors in schools. When we think about gap years historically, sometimes they've been seen as competition with college. And for guidance counselors or college counselors, that's been a bit of a struggle, especially for many of them who are evaluated or sort of see their success based on, getting students into college, getting them onto that path, right?
Yeah, good point. Didn't think of that. Yep.
Yeah. But what we really want to help do is reframe a gap, not as competition with college, but actually as a way to prepare students to be more successful in those next steps, which is typically college.
Yeah.
90% of gap year participants going directly to college that next year. And not only are they going to college, but they're actually doing better in college. There's some great research out there about gap year students. They're having more leadership roles. They're actually getting higher grades. Gap year students have higher GPAs overall than students who didn't take a gap. We're seeing them graduate faster. More than half of US undergrads take more than 4 years to complete their degree now, but actually the graduation rate is higher and faster for those gap year students, probably because they've had that time to think through what they want to be doing and how they can really be maximizing their time on campus. So it's just pretty incredible to see how counselors have been responding, especially in the last year. We've seen so much interest from them because they're hearing from their students, look at the world around us. We're confused. We're in this place where we've been learning online. We want to be out in the world again. We want to be able to have more time to make those decisions in an informed way about those next steps. So part of what I've been doing is running info sessions for counselors. We've seen such incredible response to just reaching out saying, hey, we're doing this info session about gap years in general. Let us talk you through the benefits, how it works with the college process, all of that. And we've just had such great response there. We love working with them because they can really make or break a student's next steps.
Yeah.
They really help influence what they're up to. And just having them know that gap year is an option, that it's a great option for many students, is huge. So that's something we're really working on getting the word out about right now. So I bet you have a few counselors and educators who listen to your podcast for sure.
Yes.
So
yeah.
Me too.
Glad to have them getting the gap year knowledge.
For sure. So for one thing, it's right. You have a more clear path. Maybe you're on what you want to study and maybe you're more passionate and ready for college when you get there. But also we all know that those years, you change so much in a year. And even without a gap year, that would just accelerates the change and, broadens the mind even more. But just that maturity level. Sometimes at 18, sometimes at 17, kids are going into college, and, not every kid is ready for that or ready to put the energy into studying and academics, especially if they really don't know what they want to study. So that's another good reason for a gap year.
A colleague of mine who did not take a gap year, he says something I think is very funny. He says, well, I had a gap year too. It was my freshman year, and it was, it was not the best use of my time and energy and my parents' money. So maybe
I can
relate. I can relate. That was sort of my gap year.
Yeah, your gap year too.
Absolutely.
But that is a really good point, because obviously, and we'll get into the affordability and how people can pay for this, because obviously it's not free. But you're making a really good point. If you spend your freshman year, which probably costs a lot of money, not making very good use of it, you can look at that as a gap year as an investment.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So speaking of affordability, I know a lot of listeners that are interested in potentially looking at a gap year program such as yours. What are they looking at for costs? What would a 25 or 26 week program, what does that look like cost-wise?
Great question. And first of all, I would say there are so many different gap year options out there at a lot of different price points, everything from, programs where you might earn a small stipend or have your program funded, to programs that do cost money, but who have great opportunities for payment plans or for scholarships. There are great gap year scholarships out there, believe it or not, but both through programs. So we offer our own EF scholarships as well as external scholarships out there. So
that's great.
You might want to reach out to Going Merry, Charlie Maynard, to add those to his but for the listeners that don't know, it's sort of like, I don't want to say this and get them in trouble, but it's sort of like the common app for scholarships. So it's you go to this one website.
You can say it. They can't say it.
Right. You can go to Going Merry website and just fill out one application, and they'll connect you with a whole bunch of, it's for anybody looking for a scholarship. That is the way to go. So, and we can add that link in our show notes, but you may want to reach out to them and ask them to add
get your scholarships onto
the gap year on there. Yeah,
absolutely. That's such a great resource. Wow.
Yeah.
I love that. And thinking about the affordability piece, the first piece of advice I give to anyone asking that question is don't let the financial piece be the end of the conversation. You should look into the options. There are a lot of different programs out there, a lot of different options, and people in the gap year world are overall just so excited to chat with students, to point them in the right way. If a program is not a great fit for someone, we'll say, this might not be the right fit for you, but I have someone over at another program that you might want to talk to. We believe in this gap year concept, and we want students to be able to pursue it in whatever way makes the most sense for them. So never let that be the end of the conversation, for sure.
Right. And it sounds like it can be workable in most cases. There's some way. I know that there's opportunities to fundraise for yourself, like have people get behind your gap year concept, because maybe you're going to do something that's very helpful in your programs. You do that. Also, I do know that if you're getting a college credit while you're on your gap year, there may be some ability to use a 529 savings for that and things like that. So, yeah,
that's definitely possible. We see students using their 529 accounts to pay for a gap year. I also think it's great to look, when you're looking into gap year programs, to look at what they include. For example, all of our programs do include all of your international flights. So we're arranging all of that for you as you go to Sevilla, Spain, as you go to Tokyo, as you go to Costa Rica. All of this is included in there. So just making sure that you and your family are budgeting and thinking about what expenses are included and what aren't, I think is really important there.
But still, I just want to really nail you down on what are the costs. The range, maybe. I'm sure it's a range depending on the program.
Yeah, it definitely ranges depending on length. So for the year program, for example, that's $38,500. And then that's the very highest there. It goes all the way down to in the 6,000s for some of the summer programs there. And those, again, do include your flights and accommodations, most of your meals, program activities, all of that good stuff. And I know that the price for some, they say, oh, that's, what I'm paying for my private school tuition. For others, they're saying that's way out of what is possible for our families. So I totally understand that there are totally different financial approaches there. And we really want to work with every family to think about a holistic financial plan. So is this going to work for you? Maybe a year program isn't possible, but we have great semester options for students. And that might be feasible when a student's working for a semester and then doing a gap program for a semester, and pointing them towards scholarships, both our own scholarships and external ones. So we really do enjoy working with families, and inclusion and equity and access to our programs. It's a big focus for us right now and moving forward. So we're always working to make our programs more accessible.
So what is not included in that price?
So for all of the modules except internship, most of your meals are included. During the language module, for example, the only meals that aren't included are those lunches during the week when you're at the language school. So if you pick up some tacos on the street, or maybe you pack a sandwich from home, something like that. And then for the internship module, that's the most independent part. So students are budgeting sort of how much they're going to spend on groceries, and they have their own little kitchen. So they might be cooking there. But we have a whole budgeting guide we send out to students too, to help them plan for meals. Meals are really the only necessary additional expense there. And then, any spending money, any additional trips they want to take outside of their home city in each module, those kinds of things as well.
One thing that something I read on your website or somewhere, is your concept of knowing you can bloom where you live. So like a gap year can teach you how to get out there and be able to be independent in a totally new foreign place. I mean, independent, obviously you have your other students and you are in a program, but that sense of independence and being able to bloom where you live, and knowing that you have that ability, that tool in your back pocket going forward.
Absolutely. And actually, it's funny. I was asked a couple of days ago in a webinar with counselors. One of the questions they asked was, well, what's the biggest thing now I'm 10 years out from my gap year? What's the biggest thing that you learned from your gap year? And I said basically a version of that, which is that I feel like you can throw me anywhere in any situation and I can handle it. It's and that's a pretty amazing skill. I've only really become so conscious of that in the last few years now, but just especially we live in a wacky world, and I've lived in all of these different countries and situations, and hardly anything phases me these days, which is a really, it's a great skill, this resilience, this adaptability that I think you can only learn by getting outside your comfort zone and by handling challenges and by being resilient and being able to work through anything.
And honestly, from a career coach's perspective, resiliency is one of the most important skills to develop because, honestly, we don't even know what the jobs will be in 10 to 15, 20 years from now. So people that have that embedded in them, that resiliency to learn and upskill and retrain and follow the market demands and cultural demands and everything else, it's really a critical skill to develop. I do want to just circle back to cost one more time, because I think listeners, this is really going to be an important thing for them. So on the internships, are they paid, or how does that work?
Students aren't paid during their internships. It's part of the program fees, is that placement. But, they're gaining a lot of really valuable skills. As I said, we had students get job offers from those, and it really sets them apart as they enter college. Being able to put international internship on their resume is something pretty special. So they're not earning money, but they are in these great value. Exactly.
Earning value. Yeah,
they're building value. Absolutely. Yeah.
And I just had another question about going back to the host families is, what is their role and what's their responsibility? Obviously, you're living with them, but do they have kind of a set role in your stay, or are you just kind of housing there?
Yeah, it definitely varies family to family. Typically, families have worked with us for a long time. They host students both through our EF GAP programs and other students who are at our EF language campuses studying from across the globe. So families can look very different. It could be, a traditional mom and dad and a couple of kids. It could be a grandmother who likes to open her home up to foreign visitors. It could be, a young couple who just has lived abroad and really wants to host a student because they really miss that international exposure. They come in all shapes and sizes, and every relationship looks a little different, but it's really what the student wants to make of it. So we really encourage students to make the most of those relationships. The families that we place them with are wonderful. They're really welcoming. They really want to get to know their students. So we always say, it's up to you to really foster that relationship and to make it what you want to make it. They're typically eating, dinner with them every night and breakfast with them every morning. So lots of opportunities to chat with them, to get to know them, to sort of see what their lives are like. So thinking about my own host family and learn the language. Yeah. Thinking about my own host family experience, that was one of, if not the most formative part of my gap year, just being able to get to know them so well and learn the language and really be a part of their lives.
Did you have a whole family? Like, was it a big group? Or
I had a grandmother, a grandfather, a mom, and a host sister. All in one little apartment. And it was great. I especially loved the intergenerational dynamics between the grandmother, the mom, and the daughter, really getting to see how they interact with each other and sometimes fight, but have so much love for each other. And it's so interesting to see that in another culture, especially.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I love that.
I'm just curious. So a lot of this sounds like really similar to like the study abroad programs that colleges are offering. How are you different?
I love that question because we are very similar. And I think some students and parents and guidance counselors as well have this hang up on the word gap, on this word gap year, that there's this negative connotation there. Yeah. And so sometimes we see students saying, look, what I'm telling my folks at home is that I'm doing study abroad at the beginning of my college career. And I think that's a great way to frame it for many students, because that's a concept that I think culturally in the US, we are more comfortable with than the idea of a gap year. So there are a lot of similarities, especially when you're doing an international program. I would say a couple of like more philosophical or like nitty gritty differences between the two are, first of all, a gap year is really designed to be a step away from the traditional academic system. So yes, you may be earning college credits, but usually they're college credits that you're earning by putting an academic perspective on what you're experiencing out there in the world. So it's really about the experiential education piece first, and then the academic perspective second. And secondly, I would say that it's really this time that we want students to develop on a personal level, that we want them to go through some of the experiences that will prepare them better for college, for studying abroad, in a more academically rigorous setting, for example. We really want them to be able to have this time to learn experientially. Experiential education is at the core of our program and at the core of so many other GAP programs, that you should be learning through living, that you should be learning through those experiences that you have every day. So those are the philosophical differences, but in practice and from an outsider's view, they do look pretty similar. And so that's why I would say that if you're someone struggling to explain to your home community, what you're doing, saying that you're studying abroad is not a bad way to describe a gap experience.
So you don't get the raised eyebrow.
Absolutely. I think that's so interesting, because if you look at like a lot of countries in Europe, you see more than half of high school graduates take some kind of gap year. Nice. It's very common over there. When I told my friends in Germany, I was like, oh, I'm finishing my degree and I'm going to go work for a gap year program. They said, okay, well, that's great. And, but we just we all take gap years, it's, it's something that they think is so funny that we need to be working so hard to get folks to understand the value of it, because for them, that's their parents are like, please take a gap year. This is great. Yeah. You should explore yourself, explore the world, and make sure that you're taking your next steps, feeling really confident in them.
That's a great point.
I love it.
So you mentioned that, or I noted that EF has a base in Cambridge, Mass., but you mentioned the founder was Swedish, I believe. So where are you located throughout the world? Where are your bases?
Well, actually in 114 different countries, which is pretty amazing.
Wow.
We have EF schools or staff or campuses in, over 114 countries. What's really, when we think about headquarters, so our North American headquarters are in Cambridge and in Denver, Colorado. So two big
East Coast and West Coast.
Exactly. And then our global headquarters is actually in Zurich, in Switzerland. So our operations team, for example, is in Zurich. So most days I'm chatting with somebody over there, doing some of the more logistical parts of the program, which is really awesome. We have such a global team. I love going to work every day because my colleagues here and in Zurich and in Costa Rica and in Tokyo, across the globe, everyone has such a great perspective. And we all have this sort of shared belief that having global exposure and working interculturally is so valuable. And we just love sharing our experiences with each other. So it's pretty fun.
That's awesome. Well, you've definitely sold me on the gap year. How about you, Bob?
Yeah, I'm going. I already said.
All right.
Okay.
That's what parents keep saying too. Whenever we chat with parents, they say, "Can we have a parent gap year, please?" So
Yes,
right.
yeah,
I think we got to do that next.
Yeah,
I
parents
also
need
think it would be fun to be a host family for an international student.
That's something that we do as well with high school exchange year. So that's another part of our program where we're hosting international students to come to the U.S. for high school. So definitely something to look into if you are interested in hosting students or getting involved in that.
So
Okay,
they could reach out to EF in Cambridge, Mass, or in Denver, Colorado. Is that if they want to be a host family here in the U.S.? Is that
Sure? I'm happy to be a resource to connect folks with the right people.
Okay, great.
Well, speaking of being a resource, Rebecca, where can people reach you and what is the best way to contact you?
Yeah, email is one of the best ways to find me. Rebecca, Rebecca .Barr, BARR, @ef.com is my email address, and always checking it, probably too much these days.
Yeah.
So definitely feel free to reach out to me there.
Okay, great. And we will obviously include that email address in the show notes along with the EF website. So if any of you are driving or cooking dinner, you can find that in the show notes.
Absolutely. So, Ashley, at this part of the podcast, we like to do a little bit of a rapid fire session.
Ooh, great. Love it.
We have 10 questions and you don't have to be rapid, so take your time. But my guess is you won't have any trouble. Not hard at all. Okay.
All right.
So, when you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Oh, I had so many different iterations of what I wanted to be.
Yeah.
I wanted to be an architect for a while. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a writer. I think that's something like, sorry to bring it all back to gap years, but I always think it's interesting because I never even knew that like being in international education was a career path. So it's kind of cool that I had all of these like random sort of things that I saw around me as a child, but then I was able to forge my own path, which is pretty cool.
That is really cool. Excellent. Okay. Have you seen Hamilton?
I have not seen Hamilton. Okay. I'm sorry to say.
That's okay. That is your rapid fire question. I think a lot of people have seen it, right? Uh-huh. And Meg and I have seen it and kind of got addicted to it. Kind of got addicted to it for a while there. Yeah. If you really want us to sing, we'll go for it right now.
Yeah, we can break right out into song at any moment.
Funny. I have listened to the soundtrack and I really enjoyed it. It actually got really big when I was living in Doha. And I was sort of tapped into this cultural phenomenon. And when I got back to the US, everyone was like, Hamilton. And I think I'm too late. So maybe I need to catch up.
My rapid fire question was just going to be, what was your favorite Hamilton song? But maybe you can actually answer that if you've listened to the soundtrack. Oh, well, you're putting your on. She's like, what, you don't have it memorized like Megan?
I don't have it memorized. Sorry to say.
I guess we're a unique species, Bobby.
No, probably. I don't think, probably.
Now I know what I'm doing right after this podcast.
Yeah, right. For sure. Yeah. Okay. Product you could not live without, or something that you use all the time that you couldn't live without.
Ooh, great question.
Your computer, but let's not say that.
Well, one thing that I carry with me wherever I'm living is my little Turkish coffee pot. It's called a jezve. And it's this little copper, I wish I could go pick it up from over there for you, but this tiny little coffee pot. You can use it to make the Turkish coffee, which is very strong with the grounds in it. But I also use it now to like heat up like tea or coffee if it gets cold. I use it to like boil. It's perfect for boiling one egg. And
I'm going to put that in the show
heating
notes.
up a little. Yeah.
People might like this.
Yeah. It's spelled CEZVE, jezve.
Gosh, I'm glad you spelled that.
Yeah, I know. It's so useful. No matter where you go, very lightweight. If you move around a lot, take your jezve with you.
All right. Don't leave home without it. Okay. Do you prefer the mountains and the lakes or beaches and the coast? If you had to choose. Ooh. It's hard to choose because Meg and I would have a hard time. I'd choose beaches.
Oh, it's so hard.
Mountains are like right there. Like
right there. I feel like I was always a mountain person growing up, and then I moved to Maine, and I was like, oh, but beaches are wonderful too. I especially love like a winter beach walk up here in Maine. Like I always thought of a beach as having to be warm and sunny, but I love like a snowy beach walk.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Me
I think
too.
I think I'm gonna have to go for beach, even though I love the mountains.
Right. Right. It's a tough
Ideally,
call.
like a mountain overlooking a beach.
Yeah, right. Can we get that? Right. Get right down on the
Actually,
New Zealand or something.
Yeah.
Well, no, Camden, Maine, not far from where you are.
Yeah, I was just up in Camden.
Where the ocean meets the sea, or the mountains meet the sea.
Yeah. Those views from up on Camden Hill, beautiful.
I'm trying to think of who the poet was that wrote that. I'm drawing a blank. Edna Vincent Millay, perhaps, maybe. I don't know.
Anyway. Don't quiz me on that. That's something that's not my rapid fire.
We might have to edit that out. I don't know.
Okay, so all right, if you could take a gap year right now, where would you go?
Yeah, I think if I were sticking to like the EF gap year like trajectory, I would spend a language study module in Nice in France, just like beautifully along the coast, like, you know, riding around on my bike with the baguette in the back.
Oh my gosh,
really
painting the picture,
like living that life.
I
would do service learning in Thailand. I actually lived in Thailand for a while and I love it. I would love any excuse to go back and explore more of the country. And then I would probably do my internship in Tokyo. I've never been to Japan. It's number one on my list after we get out of quarantine.
Yes.
So,
yes. I like that.
Gotta get over there. Yeah.
That sounds like a good gap year. I hope you can do it.
Me too. Me too.
Okay. Describe your breakfast today, if you had one, in one word.
Leftovers.
Great. I love that. That works for me.
Oh my gosh.
All right. Name something that you got into trouble as a kid.
Oh, I was always climbing things as a kid.
Yeah.
I was one of those ones that always wanted to just like climb every tree I could find, or as I got in trouble for in school was like climb up the bathroom walls, you know, just always wanting to scramble up something. So I guess that's why I like hiking now and all of that. So
I was
a little
just
bit of a safer way to
question
do
if
it.
you were a hiker. And we'll have to talk about that. Meg and I have been doing a lot of hiking. Okay.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah. All right. If you had to sing in karaoke, a karaoke song, what would you sing? Your friends are making you get up there.
I love it.
Get up there and sing a song.
Right now I have Lizzo songs in my brain. I don't know how familiar you are. Lizzo was the last big concert I went to right before everything shut down. I went to Amsterdam when I was writing my thesis. I thought, is it a terrible idea to go to Amsterdam to go to a Lizzo concert? It wasn't, because now we can't go anywhere. So probably a Lizzo song at this point, and I would thoroughly embarrass myself, I'm sure.
I totally would. I can't sing for at all. Okay. Are you a backseat driver?
Oh yeah, I'm terrible about it. My family teases me about that constantly.
Oh gosh, I am a little bit of one as well.
Well, it depends who's driving, probably, right?
Yeah, it depends who's driving.
My dad always teases me because I'm like, slow down. Like,
that's me. Slow down.
You're stepping on the brake over there on your side of the car.
Yeah.
Okay. Favorite topping on your pizza?
Ooh, mushrooms. Love anything mushroom. Yeah. So I love to get a bunch of different types of mushrooms, saute them up, throw them on a pizza. I do pizza nights every Saturday, so you're welcome.
Okay, well you weren't that far away, so come up there for a pizza night.
Don't be surprised once COVID's over if you get a couple
I know, amen.
Get a couple of guests.
Can't wait to get back to some normalcy and we didn't get into that on this podcast, how COVID affected the whole gap year thing, but it's probably because we're coming out of that now. So I feel like fingers crossed, it won't be a concern for you guys going forward.
Especially people planning ahead, and also just don't need to bring the emotion level down. We're having a good time here.
Okay, well, hey, that was 10 and you survived.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, boom, just like that.
That was so fast.
No problem at all.
Those are such great questions. I feel like I'm going to have to incorporate those into different things now.
There you go.
Oh, well, Rebecca, thank you so much for coming on today. It was really great to get to meet you and learn all about the benefits of a gap year.
Oh, thank you. This was such a fun conversation. Really appreciate both of your perspectives, and always happy to talk about gap years and the benefits that they have. So what a fun experience to come on here.
Well, it's a fun topic. I mean, who doesn't want to take a gap year? I think, oh my gosh, I just want to go back and do it all over again.
We have a redo.
Yeah, give me a redo. But yeah, thank you for sharing all that. And I'm sure we have some listeners out there that are like, gap year. Let's go.
All right. And parent gap year is next. So
right. You really need to develop one of those. But you do have the retirement gap year, right? Or trip.
Yeah. We've got programs for adults, programs for college students, programs for your high schoolers. So no matter where you're at, definitely check us out and see what program might fit your interests.
Yes. All right. Great.
Anybody interested can head on over to the EF website and check those out.
Check it out.
Thank you, Rebecca. Have a great day.
Thank you both. Thanks, Bobby. Thanks, Meg.
Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, for joining us on our podcast today. It was a fascinating discussion, and we learned so much about what it's like to take a gap year.
Yeah, for sure. And I think our listeners will get a lot out of this, because now if they're contemplating it, it doesn't look like something that's an excuse or an escape. It's really a positive, intentional choice. So thanks for sharing that with us, Rebecca. And while we have your attention, if you could share, subscribe, and rate our podcast, we would really appreciate that. You know it helps us out. You've probably heard it every time you listen to any other podcast, but they're not kidding. It's really what makes a difference.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Everybody that's listening, thank you for joining us. And also a special thank you to anyone that gives us that extra little boost by subscribing to our podcast.
Yes, you're our heroes.
Yes, for sure. Have a great week, everybody. See you next time.
Bye. And this has been an Academic and Career Advising Services production.